Using a historic offensive performance on Friday night and some fantastic pitching from Dean Kremer on Sunday, the Orioles got a pretty impressive win in the series over the Red Hot Rays this weekend. And I'll recap it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, June 30th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles series win over the Tampa Bay Rays over the weekend as the O's took 2 of 3 with a dominant 22-6 victory on Friday night. Then kind of laid an egg and lost 11-1 on Saturday, but bounced back with a 5-1 victory on Sunday to take the series. I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from Friday, including the Orioles setting some almost all-time records with the offense they showed. I'll tell you the recap from Saturday and discuss Zach Eflin's injury and why he may be headed to the injured list. And finally, we'll talk about the awesome start from Dean Kremer on Sunday. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So the Orioles take 2 out of 3 from the Rays, and let's start with Friday night, because what a night it was for the Orioles. Coming off the disappointing series loss to the Rangers, they had the off day on Thursday. The Red Hot Rays, who, even though the O's had split a 4-game series with them in Tampa last week, and quite frankly, had they not blown a giant lead, should have won 3 of 4. The Rays were playing well. They'd won 5 of 6 since that series. They were a half game behind the Yankees out of first place coming into the weekend, with a chance to kind of bury a struggling Orioles team and jump into first. And instead, they didn't do that, although it did look like they were going to do it on Friday night, although the Orioles emerged with a 22-6 victory on Friday to open up this series. So let's start with that one, the 5 things you need to know from the blowout Friday night victory for the Orioles. And the first thing you need to know is the O's put up a historic offensive performance in this game. Their 22 runs is tied for the second most runs ever in franchise history. That is since they became this version of the Baltimore Orioles back in 1954. The all-time record was September 28th of 2000, when the Orioles had a 23-1 win over the Toronto Blue Jays that day. That is the only time they scored more runs than the 22 they put together on Friday night. And if you're watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, you're going to get some trips down memory lane in this episode. We got some box scores to put up of some games where the Orioles have come close offensively to what they did on Friday night. So let's start with the 23-1 victory from 2000, their all-time record for runs scored in a game. You see the box score here. I mean, Brady Anderson drove in 4. Delino DeShields drove in 5. I feel like I know ball, but I have never heard of Gene Kingsale, the Orioles starting center fielder in the 9-hole that day, who went 2 for 6 with a couple of ribbies, having a 4-hit day from Brooke Fordyce in this one. Yeah, you're remembering some guys from the Orioles' 23-1 win over the Blue Jays. They had scored 22 once before, which is why this ties for second all time. It was actually 1 year before the Orioles scored 23. June 13th of 1999, the Orioles beat the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta 22-1, got 7 runs off of John Smoltz, and then just exploded off the Atlanta bullpen when they got Smoltz out of the game in the 3rd inning. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the box score here. This one was wild. Cal Ripken Jr. going 6 for 6 with 6 RBIs in this game. Will Clark was 4 for 4 with 5 ribbies. Charles Johnson drove in 3. How about Mike Mussina? Of course, this was a game at a National League team in 99, so he was hitting. Mussina went 2 for 5 with 3 RBIs as the pitcher in this game as the Orioles clobbered the Braves in that one. Quite a scene, quite some scenes, and quite some guys to remember from these 2 games. The Orioles also had 21 hits on Friday night. That was their most since June 6th of 2021 in an 18-5 win over Cleveland. Now, the franchise record is 26 hits. They've done that twice, once in 1980, and once in 2015. But I did want to show that box score from June 6, 2021. This was that weird series in 2021 where Cleveland was like a good team and the Orioles just randomly destroyed them and swept them in a 3-game series in the middle of that season in Baltimore. Here's the box score from that one if you're watching on YouTube. Bunch of multi-hit games, 3 ribbies for Santander, 3 hits from Mountcastle, a couple of hits from Austin Wynns and Maikel Franco, and DJ Stewart went 3 for 3 in this game. Yeah, some definite fun names out of that one. Jorge Lopez was the starting pitcher in that game for the Orioles when they got that victory over Cleveland the last time they had 21 hits. 8 walks that they drew Friday. That was a season high, not close to an all-time high, but a season high for the Orioles. And 14 extra base hits that the O's had on Friday night. That is a new franchise record. The previous high was 12. They had done it twice, once in 2008 and once in 2009, 14 extra base hits, and 44 total bases from the Orioles offense on Friday night. Was they're tied for their second most ever. The most ever, they were one shy of it. 45 total bases on August 16th of 2015 when the Orioles beat the A's 18-2. One more box score to show you, courtesy of Baseball Reference here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, that 18-2 win. Remember, that was that crazy game. Remember Jason Garcia, Orioles Rule 5 draft pitcher? He actually had an at-bat in this game, and he faced an A's position player and drew a walk. That was a weird one. Gerardo Parra was 5 for 6 with 3 driven in. Caleb Joseph had 3 hits. Henry Urrutia had 3 RBIs in this game. Adam Jones, Manny Machado each drove in 3 in this one. Yeah, some blasts from the past to go back and look at the last time the Orioles did some of the things that they were able to do on Friday night. 9 doubles, tied a franchise record, done it once in 2009, once in 1996. And this one comes from the great Sarah Langs of MLB.com. The Orioles win on Friday night when they went out and flipped this game on its head. Excuse me, I keep saying 22-6. It was a 22-8 win for the Orioles. But the Orioles' 14-run win is the largest for any team that trailed by at least 6 runs in that same game in the last 125 years of Major League Baseball. To flip a game from down 6 to win by 14, basically nobody has ever done that. And the second thing you need to know is it was a banner night for many Orioles hitters. That's going to come with the territory when you win a game 22-8. Gunnar Henderson goes 4 for 6 with a triple, a homer, and 5 hard hit balls. He was a double shy of the cycle. 4th career 4-hit game for Gunnar, his first since July 19th of last year against Texas. Ramon Arias came off the bench and went 3 for 4 with a double and 2 ribbies in this game. It was his first 3-hit game since April 26th. Ramon Laureano, 2 for 3 with 2 hits and 2 walks. Just the second time this year he's reached base at least 4 times in a game. How about Colton Cowser? 3 for 4 with 3 doubles and 2 free passes in this game. His first career game with 3 doubles. He had a 2-double game once. That was April 9th of last year in Boston. That was kind of the Colton Cowser breakout game. And it's the first career game for Cowser in the big leagues in which he has reached base 5 times. He'd reached base 4 times once in his career previously. Gary Sanchez continues to be hot. He was 4 for 5 with a double, a homer, a walk, 4 RBIs. He had a career high 5 hard hit balls in this game, and his 4 hits ties a career high. He had done it 3 times now in his career, but the only other 2 were back in 2016 and 2018 when he was like peak young star catcher Gary Sanchez with the Yankees. And his 5 times on base also ties a career high. He's done that twice before, and that was both in 2017 when he was also awesome Gary Sanchez with the Yankees. And finally, Kobe Mayo goes 2 for 6 with a double, 4 RBIs, and his first career homer. Now, it comes with an asterisk. He hit it in the 8th inning off of Rays position player pitcher Jose Caballero, because at that point, that's who was pitching in this game. Kobe Mayo becomes the only Orioles player ever to hit his first big league home run off a position player. Mayo kind of put the hands in the air, kind of laughed it off, knowing, hey, I finally got my first big league homer. You know, he hit basically 1 million home runs, it seemed, in the minor leagues. And for it to come off a position player, hopefully it gives him the confidence, though, to hit one here soon off a legitimate major league pitcher. But the third thing you need to know from this win is that the Orioles did all of this basically without Jordan Westburg. He, remember, injured his finger on a slide last Saturday in New York, had to leave the game in the first inning. But he did return to the lineup on Wednesday, played that game, and the Orioles had the off day Thursday. He's back in the lineup Friday, hits a one-out double in the first inning, slides headfirst into second, catches that finger, and you could immediately see it. He re-injured it. Trainers came out. Westberg comes out of the game. Arias comes in, then has 3 hits off the bench. X-rays were luckily negative once again, and the Orioles said on Saturday that Westberg is day-to-day, but he did not play on Saturday or Sunday. Orioles said on Sunday that the hope is he appears early in this series at Texas that starts tonight, so hopefully he's back in the lineup tonight. At worst, maybe Tuesday night he returns again for the O's, but the injuries continue for Westberg between the broken hand last year when he's hit by a pitch, then the hamstring this year, and the 2 finger issues. Jordan Westberg, since last August 1st, the Orioles have played 136 games since last August 1st. Jordan Westberg has played in just 42 of them. He is an important player. He was an all-star last year. Mansolino called him the glue of this lineup. That's one of the reasons why the Orioles have struggled so much since last August 1st. They've barely had any Jordan Westberg, and even when he's been on the field in that stretch, he's been just a 92 WRC plus hitter when he's been actually out there since last August 1st. Before last August 1st, when he was healthy, a 119 WRC plus between 2023 and 24 with the Orioles. Those are big differences. They need to get him healthy and consistently back into this lineup. Now, because they were going to be without Westberg for a couple of days, the Orioles did feel the need to make a roster move just to get another infielder up here. So Dylan Carlson, as well as he's been playing, was optioned to AAA. Emmanuel Rivera was called back up to the big leagues. You know he's always going to stick around. And then Kyle Tyler, a starting pitcher in AAA, who the O's got on waivers a couple of weeks ago. The O's did need to clear up a 40-man roster spot for Rivera, so they DFA'd Tyler to open up that spot. Rivera will be the extra infielder for now. We'll see what they do kind of later this week once Westberg returns. If they keep Rivera, if they make another move, I'm kind of intrigued to see if maybe with Carlson down, that could be the opening for someone like Dylan Beavers to get a call up later this week. That is certainly a possibility. Fourth thing you need to know from the Orioles' blowout win on Friday night is that Tomoyuki Sugano struggled again. Now, he completed 5 innings in this game for the first time in his last 4 starts, but it was not pretty at all. Sugano's final line in his Friday night start, 5 innings, 7 runs on 9 hits, 2 Ks, 1 walk, and 3 home runs allowed for the right-hander. His ERA is now over 4 for the first time this year. And Sugano, it wasn't good. He allowed 6 runs in the second inning on 3 home runs. And if you're watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, you'll see this chart from StatCast and Baseball Savant. This is the plot of the 3 homers that Sugano allowed in that second inning. And you can see it just cutter, curveball, mostly in the middle of the plate. This is not where Sugano can live. He is going to get hurt, especially by good offensive teams like the Rays. He's going to get hurt if he lives in these parts of the plate. That's what he did. And that second inning just completely got away from him. Now, it was nice that he was able to stay in the game. He did give up 1 further run, was able to pitch through 5 innings, and that ended up being gigantic for the Orioles that he was able to pitch 5 just because of what happened pitching-wise the next day on Saturday. But it was not good again from Sugano. And it was awesome that the Orioles made the comeback, right? I mean, it's 6-0 going into the bottom of the second inning. This is a team that so many times this year has gotten down big early because of bad starting pitching, and the offense has just rolled over. And instead, the Orioles answered with 4 of their own in the bottom of the second, got right back in the game, and eventually were able to come back and win this one 22-8, obviously pull away. But it was awesome to see them immediately strike back and kind of get some payback, right, for going up 8-0 in the second in Tampa Bay last week and then losing that game 12-8. They pulled the reverse on the Rays, but you don't want to be in that position in the first place, and that's just where Sugano put them. And this, kind of what happened to him on Friday, is how I figured Sugano would struggle when he did begin to struggle in the majors. You knew he was going to go through a rough patch at some point. He's got diminished stuff at 35, even with how good he was for the Orioles early in the year. And this is how I saw it going, right? Too many pitches in the middle of the plate. It's not elite stuff. Too much hard contact turns into home runs. Not what's happened the last 3 starts when he had all the walks and the command issues. The command, at least from a walk sense, it was better than it's been in a couple of weeks, but you still can't be leaving pitches like that in the middle of the plate. And those are also just different kinds of command issues, but it has not been good Past 4 starts for Sugano, 17 and 2/3 innings, 30 hits, 12 Ks, 7 walks, 5 homers allowed. That's an 8.15 ERA for Tomoyuki Sugano's last 4 times out there. The O's even gave him, he got 2 extra days of rest before Friday night start. They made a point to do that and called up Brandon Young to start in place of him on Wednesday. Lost that game and got a bad start in this one. Hopefully he can figure it back out. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' historic 22-8 win over the Rays on Friday night is that Cade Stroud put together a really good outing. And it was very low leverage, right? Stroud enters this game in the 8th inning. The Orioles are just looking to kind of close out a blowout victory. The score was 15-8 when he entered. The Orioles scored 7 more in the 8th to make it 22-8. But Stroud, who was added to the 40-man roster this offseason, had only 1 big league appearance this year, came up and pitched 1 inning back in mid-May, and then was sent back down to AAA Norfolk, where the right-hander was pitching well. 13 innings, 8 hits, 3 runs, 11 Ks, 3 walks, and a homer since being sent back to AAA. But he threw 2 scoreless innings on Friday night to finish out the game. Didn't make a mess of it. Didn't have to make Tony Mansolino think about going to another reliever. Stroud was able to lock it down. His go-to cutter looked really, really good. He was actually recalled on Friday when Brandon Young was optioned back to AAA before the game. And it was just nice to have him go out there in a blowout and say, look, I'm going to throw strikes. I'm going to work through these innings. I'm not going to make you sweat anymore. That was nice to see for Stroud. Unfortunately, he was rewarded with pitching in a blowout on the opposite end on Saturday and then being sent back to AAA before Sunday's game as the Orioles recalled Matt Bowman as he rejoined the bullpen this weekend. But cool to see Stroud get one really good MLB outing out there, and I'm sure we'll see him back in the O's bullpen at some point this year. So an absolutely crazy win to open the series. Game 2 on Saturday looked more like the bad version of the O's we've seen many times this year. We'll discuss that coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball, under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Now, whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it easy, and it makes you feel like you are part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Just open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. So the Orioles put a beating on the Rays on Friday night, winning it 22-8. And then in very much 2025 Orioles fashion, they came out after 22 runs and scored 1 single run on Saturday in an 11-1 loss to the Rays in Game 2. What a roller coaster. More downs than ups, but what a roller coaster season this has been for the Orioles. So we start with what went right from Saturday's loss. Well, Jackson Holliday had another 3-hit game. He goes 3 for 5 with 3 singles and a stolen base. It was the 4th 3-hit game in the month of June for Jackson and his 3rd in the last 9 days. He had come into that game on a little 1 for 14 skid over his last 3 games, but those 3 hits hopefully will kind of help him get out of it. And he is now an All-Star Game finalist. Him and Gleyber Torres of the Tigers are the 2 finalists at second base in the American League. It'll go to a vote between the 2 of them that starts Monday and ends Wednesday. And even if he loses that vote, he's got the stats to be the second baseman that just still makes the All-Star team as a reserve. And how cool would that be for Jackson and what's going to be really his first full big league season to be an All-Star after all the just whatever people getting on a 20-year-old for struggling in the big leagues last year. This is the player we saw Jackson becoming. And here he is this year. And it's been very, very cool to see. What went wrong from Saturday? Well, Zach Eflin was bad again. And then he left with an injury. Eflin coming off of by far his 2 worst starts in an Oriole uniform. June 16th in Tampa, 5 innings, 12 hits, 7 runs. June 21st in New York, 3 innings, 10 hits, 6 earned runs. And then he comes out there on the top of the first Saturday and gives up 4 more earned runs on 28 pitches before finally ending the first inning. and then he was removed from the game before the second with what the Orioles called lower back tightness. Now, it's just the third time in Eflin's career in which he has allowed at least 4 earned runs in 3 consecutive starts. The other 2 times it happened, once in 2016, once in 2017, both with the Phillies when he was very early on in his career. This hasn't happened in a long time. And the last time, even for Eflin, he had failed to go more than 5 innings for 3 consecutive starts. You got to go back to 2018 with Philly. Like this is just not the pitcher Zach Eflin has been for a long, long time. Now, only 1 of the 8 balls put in play against Eflin in the first inning was hit hard. Now, the Jonathan Aranda 2-run homer was destroyed. He hit that ball 467 feet for a 2-run shot. But otherwise, it was Eflin kind of getting BABIP'd in some soft contact. Only 2 whiffs on 14 swings, though, and that's been the big issue with Eflin. Now, it's certainly some kind of injury, and Eflin and Tony Mansolino both said after the game that Eflin was actually feeling those issues in the back while he was warming up in the bullpen before the game, but he basically was like, look, it wasn't terrible. I could still throw. I could still get the ball to the plate. And he said he didn't want to put his team in that bad of a pitching position, just saying, 15 minutes before first pitch, hey, I can't go, and it's got to be essentially an unscheduled bullpen game. And you like to hear that from Eflin. You like the Bulldog mentality, but he threw that first inning and he clearly did not have it. And the O's still had to go to the bullpen in the second anyway. Instead of it being 0-0, it was already 4-0. And him just covering 1 inning and putting you at a huge disadvantage is probably worse than just having to have Scott Bluette start that game and figure it out from there. So you like the mentality, but it probably hurt the Orioles even more that he even went out there after feeling that in the bullpen. And you got to think, like, how much has this been bugging him for a little while now? In these last 3 starts, 9 innings, 27 hits, 17 earned runs, 6 Ks, 4 walks, 6 homers. And really remember, he had that lat issue, right? And that's kind of that's an upper back thing, not a lower back thing, but he had that lat issue. He missed, most of April, beginning of May. He comes back in early May. And since he's come back from the lat issue, he's got a 6.49 ERA and a 6.20 FIP. Like, he has just been straight up not good. He had 3 really good starts before the injury, went on the IL, came back. He's honestly been terrible. He's been the Orioles' worst starting pitcher since then. And the stuff itself has been kind of the same before and after the injury, but his stuff overall has fallen. It was a 100 stuff plus last year. It's down to 93 this year. He is not the same guy, and he was never a gigantic strikeout pitcher. That's not Zach Eflin. That's not the guy the Orioles traded for at the deadline last year. He's a guy who's going to paint the corners, throw a bunch of different pitches, get you to hit, pop-ups and soft grounders and be efficient and pitch deep into games. And that's what he was all of last year and the 3 starts this year before the lat issue. And since coming back, he just has not been the same at all. But it really does seem like the biggest issue of them all is the arm ankle. And it's something that Eflin talked about. Andy Kuska had a good story in the Baltimore Banner back in early June. It had been just under a month since Eflin had returned from the lat injury, and he was pitching well at the very beginning. And then he kind of started to hit a rough patch there in kind of late May, early June. There were a couple of bad starts, and Eflin talked publicly, and he was like, yeah, my arm angle dropped by 2 degrees. It doesn't feel like a lot, but it changed everything about how my pitches came out of my hand, the movement on my pitches, the stuff, everything. And he was like, I'm working to get it fixed, working to get that arm angle back up a bit. And he did work at it a little bit and had a couple of better looking starts. It was like, okay, Eflin identified it. He's still healthy and it's going good. Now the arm angle has dropped again. And it's not that guys with lower arm angles can't be good. They absolutely can. But it does change the way that your pitches tunnel. It changes the way they move, the way they come out, the deception of them. It changes your command if you're not realizing that your arm is dropping as low as it is and you're not used to it. And the reality of the situation is that even though he identified it, he has not gotten that higher arm angle back. If you're watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, this is going to show Zach Eflin's arm angle by game here in 2025. And you can see the very beginning of the chart back in late March. His first start of the year, he was up at about a 27-degree arm angle. His last start before Saturday, he was down to under 23 degrees. Now, again, you're thinking 4 degrees of arm angle. That's like this versus this. Like, it's barely different. Does that really make an issue? Really make a change, Connor? Yeah, it does. when guys are so used to, especially big, tall guys like Zach Eflin, the mechanics are even more important for him, for them to be consistent every time, because he has so many levers going. If one little thing is off, it can throw the whole operation off. And 4 degrees of arm angle is a pretty significant change to have happen in basically a half a season, really less than a half a season at this point with the time he's been injured. That is significant, the drops you can see on this chart. And so now you start to wonder, and again, you see the biggest drops happening like as soon as he felt the injury and then came back from the injury. I don't know if it's because of the lat and the lower arm angle is what his body's just doing to avoid more pain. That could be a possibility, but he's got to get that arm angle back. And you'll see another chart here. This is Zach Eflin's arm angles really throughout his career, month by month, every season. And you can see, back when he was with Philly and with the Rays, 2020, 2021, like he was up at 32, 33, 34 degrees, and he's now down at a 23-degree arm angle. Like, that is a gigantic difference in a span of 4 or 5 years to drop that low. And it happens with guys as they age and they have to adjust. And Eflin had been adjusting well over the past couple of years, but the arm angle, I think, is changing the stuff. And maybe it has to do with him trying to avoid the injury again, but something is clearly not right. And Tony Mansolino said it before Sunday's game. He didn't put Zach Eflin on the injured list, but Mansolino said it is trending towards an IL stint for Zach Eflin. So it'll be 15 days on the IL, most likely. We'll see from there. Friday would be his next start. If Cade Povich is ready, it'll probably be him. If not, you'll see Chase McDermott or Brandon Young come back up and start that Friday game. And eventually it'll be just Povich kind of gets his rotation spot back for now, because he made a rehab start already as he's trying to come back from that little hip issue. But this is something that was got to get figured out. Number one, because Eflin had been their best starter since the deadline last year. He was their ace, de facto ace coming into the season, and now he's your worst starting pitcher. That's not good. Other thing is, yeah, Mike Elias talked this weekend and said, we're not committed to being sellers yet. And yeah, they won a series against the Rays, and that was great. This team is still 11 games under 500 here as we're about to enter July. It's going to be smart for them to be sellers at the deadline. And a healthy Zach Eflin, who's pitching like we know he can bring you back something at the deadline. If you have an unhealthy Zach Eflin, who's looked this terrible over the past month and a half, that's not going to get you much. And that puts the Orioles in a bad spot, whether they're buyers or sellers come this trade deadline. So hopefully some time off from the back issue can heal things up for Zach Eflin. And the shout out for Saturday, well, the shout out goes to Chadwick Tromp and Luis Vasquez, 2 guys we didn't really expect to be on the Orioles major league roster at this point in late June, but here we are, and they're at least doing something. Chadwick Tromp got the start behind the plate on Saturday and hit his first Orioles home run, a solo shot in the 5th inning off of Zach Littell, made it 9-1. It was the only Orioles run of the day. Just his 6th MLB homer in 176 plate appearances, and his first since 2021 when he was with the Giants, hit one in Texas off our old friend Kyle Gibson. And it took him 4 more years, but he was able to get another one. And then you got to shout out Luis Vasquez for pitching again. The Orioles in a tough spot with Eflin only giving them 1 inning, Sugano going 5 the day before. They go to Luis Vasquez as a position player pitching, not even in the 9th, in the 8th inning in an 11-1 game. And guess what? Vasquez throws 2 scoreless innings. 2 scoreless innings. How about that from Luis Vasquez? And my mistake. It was not the Orioles' only run. The O's, of course, got 2 runs very late in the 9th inning of this game to lose 11-3. But how about Vasquez? I mean, were the Rays really trying that hard? No, they were not. But Luis Vasquez is up there throwing 35 to 40 miles an hour and saving the bullpen and getting ground balls. And that's now 3 scoreless innings on the year for Luis Vasquez. Is he the best position player pitcher in the big leagues right now? I'm going to open that discussion at this point. But either way, not a very fun loss for the Orioles. Very easily could have flowed right into Sunday and a series loss. But instead, Dean Kremer was dealing. And the O's got a pretty impressive series win over this Rays team. Tell you how they did it to finish off the show coming up next. So the Orioles were able to jump off the mat after kind of an embarrassing 11-3 loss on Saturday, turn it around Sunday, and win 5-1 to win this series. They take 2 out of 3 from the Rays. They are still at just 36-47 as they cross the halfway point of this 2025 season. this weekend. They are now up to 83 games played and 36 wins. Not a great spot to be in, but a series win is a series win, especially over a divisional rival that you are theoretically chasing for a wild card spot. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from Sunday's win. The first thing you need to know is Dean Kremer was outstanding. Second outing of the year with 7 scoreless innings for Dean Kremer. Also did it on May 2nd against the Royals. He goes 7 zeros in this one, 3 hits, 6 Ks, 1 walk on 93 pitches for Dean. Really, really impressive what we saw out of the right-hander. Now, StatCast was down for about half of Sunday's game. There was a power outage due to heat in parts of the stadium that knocked out the velo readings, all the StatCast readings. It also knocked out the ability for the video people to call the bench coach and be like, hey, we should challenge that. So teams got unlimited challenges in this game. StatCast came back around the 5th. So 60 of Dean's 93 pitches were not tracked at all. We don't know what pitch they were exactly. We don't know their velocity, the spin rate, all that good stuff. But on the pitches we did get, velocity was actually down across the board for Kremer. But even though velo was down, command was up. He was dotting the baseball everywhere. And that command's kind of been here all year. Only one start this year from Dean Kremer in which he has walked more than 2 batters. Again, just walked the 1 on Sunday. He still had the splitter. That's something he didn't have early in the year, but he has now. And the last 3 starts have been tremendous for Dean. 17 2/3, 12 hits, 2 runs, 17 Ks, and 4 walks. That's a 1.02 ERA. And even his last 7 outings have been great. 41 1/3 innings, 38 hits, 38 strikeouts, 10 walks, 2.61 ERA for Dean Kremer his last 7 times out there. And as you know, the guys who were carrying this rotation early, Zach Eflin and Tomoyuki Sugano, as they continue to struggle, Trevor Rogers, Charlie Morton, and Dean Kremer all have ERAs under 3 since May 25th, since Trevor Rogers came back up to rejoin this rotation against Boston. Those are the 3 right now, kind of carrying this Orioles rotation at the moment and keeping them at least somewhat afloat in this season. Second thing you need to know from Sunday's win is that Colton Cowser had 2 huge moments in this game. The first one came in the 2nd inning. He opened the scoring with an RBI single off of Rays starter Taj Bradley to put the O's up 1-0. Just a ground ball the other way to score Ramon Laureano. And Cowser's been great. Since coming off the injured list with that fractured thumb, he came back in early June. He's got a 148 WRC plus entering Sunday since coming back. Been a huge addition to the lineup, but arguably maybe an even bigger addition defensively to this team. Their outfield defense with the likes of Jorge Mateo and Heston Kjerstad out there was really struggling. Cowser making an insane, outstanding home run robbery in the 8th inning, robbing Danny Jansen of a 2-run shot that would have made it a 5-2 game, leaping high over the wall in left center field to make the catch in the 8th. Cool game. The moves were out for Colton Cowser on Sunday. Third thing you need to know from that one is that the 2 Orioles on the 1-year deal veterans, they stayed red hot in the Oriole lineup. First was Ramon Laureano, who went 2 for 4 with a single and a double in this one. Laureano, since returning off the injured list with that ankle issue in early June, he's hitting .282 with an .874 OPS in that stretch. He's been great. And Gary Sanchez, another huge game, 2 for 4 with an RBI in this one. He's just been outstanding since he came back in mid-June from the wrist issue. How about a 357 average and a 1093 OPS for Gary since coming back? Of course, it's been a huge loss with Adley Rutschman going on the IL with the oblique issue, but Sanchez has given even more offensive production at this point. He's not the defender Rutschman is, we know that, but he's given the O's a big bat in that lineup, and both have been huge for the Orioles on very cheap deals. And the question is, like, could both of these guys, could you trade them both and get actually something back for both of them at the deadline? That would be huge for this Orioles team if they were able to do it. Fourth thing you need to know from the series clinching win on Sunday is that really all the Orioles contributed offensively in this one, at least all the starters. 8 of the 9 Orioles starters had at least 1 hit in this game. Jackson Holliday was the only one who did not, but Holliday did draw a walk. It was a 10-pitch walk he drew to lead off the game, but then, of course, did get caught stealing at second base. And the Orioles, the 5 runs came on 5 RBIs from 5 different players. Nice to see Kobe Mayo get another RBI single, also ripped a ball that was caught at the wall. Nice catch by Chandler Simpson in, I believe, the 5th or 6th inning. That almost looked like his first home run off a real pitcher. Mayo swinging it better. And the team came through in really 2 big spots. 2 runs in the 5th and 2 runs in the 6th as they pulled away in this one. Orioles went 4 for 12 with runners in scoring position in this one. You will absolutely love that. And they had 2 sac flies in those spots as well that, 2 sacrifice flies that brought in runs, the 3rd and the 5th runs, they won't show up in those runners and scoring position stats, but they are really good plate appearances, situational for the Orioles to get the job done. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 5-0 win over the Rays on Sunday that got them this series win is that the bullpen was able to come in after 7 strong from Kremer and close this thing out. Keegan Aiken threw a scoreless 8th. Of course, he was helped by the home run robbery from Colton Cowser. And then the Orioles went to Felix Bautista. Now, not a save situation, right? You're up 5-0 in the 9th inning, but Bautista hadn't pitched in 5 days. And you got to get him out there to at least throw so he doesn't get too rusty. But Russ seemed to be a factor in this one. Gave up a leadoff homer to Brandon Lau. Then he walked Yandy Diaz on 5 pitches. And all of a sudden, you're getting a little bit nervous despite still a 4-run lead in the 9th inning. Now, Felix did kind of clamp it back in after that. And he struck out the next 3 batters to end the game and give the O's the 5-1 win. But the home run he allowed, it snapped a streak of 10 consecutive outings for Felix without allowing an earned run, and 14 consecutive outings without allowing a homer. That was just the 3rd long ball Bautista has allowed this season. But I thought the weirdest thing was it took Felix 24 pitches to get through that 9th inning, 22 fastballs, 2 sliders. First thing that's notable, 22 fastballs. That's a lot of using one pitch. And the other thing, he didn't throw a splitter. Arguably his best pitch, and there were a good amount of left-handed batters he faced for the Rays, just didn't throw a splitter. He's pitched 150 times in the big leagues in his career. Sunday was just the 9th outing in his career of those 150 in which Felix did not even throw one splitter. And it was the first time in 2025 he'd thrown a game and not thrown at least one splitter. Kind of odd to see. I'd like to hear from Felix about maybe he just didn't have the feel for the pitch and figured with the big lead he could just get through the inning with all fastballs, and that, despite giving up the home run, that's pretty much what Felix was able to do. But either way, seems like he's healthy, locks down the win, and the Orioles get a nice-looking series win to finish off this homestand against their division rivals, the Rays. But the Orioles now go right back on the road. No off days, at least coming up in the next few days. They will get one on Thursday, but not before they head down to Texas. The Rangers, who just came in and found a way to take 2 out of 3 from the Orioles in Baltimore just last week. Well, the 2 teams will match up again here on Monday night, starting a 3-game series in Arlington. Game 1 tonight on MASN at 8:05. Trevor Rogers will take the hill again for the Orioles. And the O's would love for him to repeat what he did against the Rangers last Monday when he went 8 scoreless innings, 4 Ks, 3 hits, and no walks in that one for Rogers. I'll take that one once again. He'll go up against the veteran lefty Patrick Corbin, who pitched in that same game against Trevor Rogers. And the Orioles got on him for 5 runs on 9 hits over 5 innings of work for Corbin. Let's see if they can again hit a lefty, which they've been doing a little bit better over the past couple of chances. Then I will be back with you on Tuesday, recapping Game 1 between the Orioles and the Rangers, and getting you any of those Orioles news and notes you may need to know as we get closer to the draft and the trade deadline here, as the calendar will turn over to July when I'm back with you tomorrow. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.